So my talk is about autonomy, but it's also about community, just to get that straight. I have a bit of a problem, actually. When someone tells me what to do, my heart starts pounding, my blood starts racing, and I get a bit clammy and confused. A little bit like what some people must feel like on a stage talking to 600 people. But mine's more about when someone tells me what to do, I kind of freak out. And I start thinking, why are you telling me what to do? Surely a more constructive way to do this would be to suggest or even to invite. Actually, now that we're thinking of this, is this actually the right thing to be doing? Have you considered the alternatives? Have you collaborated on this? Have you sought input? No, sorry, I don't think I'm going to do this. And it's always been this way for me, much to the discontent of my lovely parents. Authority and being told what to do is not my cup of tea. But in the new world of work, I've come to see that's not necessarily a problem, especially as the best kind of organizations are working in a place where there is less hierarchy. So there's less people telling each other what to do. So my name is Kate. I'm from Inspiral, which is a network of social enterprise businesses based in New Zealand. I'm a founder of Inspiral Labs, which is one of those ventures. And I'm really delighted to be here today in this beautiful building in beautiful Budapest at this conference. Special thank you to Prezi, EPAM, and Ericsson for organizing this amazing event. So today, I'm going to talk about my favorite subject, autonomy. I'm also going to talk about autonomy in the context of community. And you might be thinking, isn't that a little bit diametrically opposed? Surely autonomy is about a lack of constraints, and community is a little bit about constraints in the form of people. How does that work? But hopefully I'll prove to you that the two are very much intertwined. And actually, you can get more autonomy by being in a strong community. The case study we'll talk about is my organization or network, Inspiral. And we'll talk a bit about some of the organizing structures and tools that kind of enable such an amazing autonomous network of 300 entrepreneurs to work together with no bosses and no hierarchy and to get a lot of work done. And just a caveat, this is my first time using Prezi, and it is an amazing tool, but things might be flying around all over the place. But we'll bear with it. So let's start with the definition. To me, autonomy is freedom from external control or coercion. And when I started work a few years ago, I kind of thought things were a bit different than this. I thought work was an exchange, really. I would go to some big kind of dark office, and for 40 hours a week, I would exchange my labor. I would do a set of tasks that were handed down to me from someone with more experience and more wisdom. I wouldn't complain. I would be polite. I would dress a certain way. I wouldn't leave the office. And in exchange, I would get a nice little sum of money in my bank account every 2 weeks, even if I had a sick day, even if I went on holiday. And that was kind of the Faustian pact that I was signing. A few months into this, just a few months, I realized that reaction that I told you about at the beginning was happening almost hourly. And it wasn't very sustainable to be working in this way. So I quit. And I went and started my own business. And I did that for a little while, but I realized, okay, I've got all the autonomy in the world here. I'm out here on my own. You know, this myth of the entrepreneur who goes out and starts their own company and makes waves. But I'm so isolated, and I'm not really having fun because I don't have a team. So, just around the corner from me in Wellington, my hometown in New Zealand, there were these people called Inspiral, and they were working on social enterprise businesses. And there were a bunch of them, and they had started this network of people. And I'll go into that a lot more in a little bit. But what I realized is there's so many people out there like me who are not so good when they're told what to do. And when something is demanded of you, you don't want to give it. You want to hold on to it. And I think that's a problem, potentially. Another problem is for technology organizations. There is a real scarcity of digital technologists out there. And there's a huge draw card in this freelancer digital nomad lifestyle. You could be, instead of in an office tapping away, you could be with your laptop at the beach or in a really comfy cafe. I, for one, am going home to New Zealand shortly to sit at a beach and tap away on my laptop, even though I'm not a freelancer. So tech companies are not just competing with each other to hire the best talent, they're competing with this digital nomad lifestyle. And by 2020, research shows that 50% of all workers will be freelancers in the US and the UK. So this is a huge phenomenon, and it's growing all the time. Slightly concerning if you're a tech company and you need a really good team working together, co-located all the time to build a good product. The other thing I've noticed is that developers, web people, they really value autonomy. They really value mastery, and they really value purpose. So the age of foosball tables, limitless supplies of coffee, pizza, all of the perks, is starting to become ubiquitous. Everyone's doing it. How are you going to retain these talented people? If you can give them some purpose, maybe you'll be getting there. And that's where community comes in. So Inspiral is really a community of 300 or so pretty crazy people who have said, no, I'm not going to work with any hierarchy anymore, and I'm going to work on social impact business, which in and itself is actually kind of hard to do. And what keeps us going and what keeps us innovating and creating lots of new processes and products and tools for working without hierarchy is this amazing community. It's like a tribe of people. So when I kind of joined Inspiral, I realized these people thought the same, similar to me. We care about a lot of the same stuff, and we're making conscious efforts to really get to know each other all the time. So a big part of life at Inspiral is going away on retreats a few times a year and hanging out with people. And it's a very strong community. This is a photo from one of our retreats, and this is one of those circles where you go down and everyone gives you a high five. A big part of being able to experiment and remain, viable in this world of digital startups, where you have to be constantly innovating, when the change is, every day something will change, means that collaboration is so important. And I really believe that collaboration is hugely beneficial if you do it all the time. And I'm not just saying, collaboration is one of the biggest buzzwords out there, but if you're actually practicing it and doing it, it can bring much more innovation to your organization. So the other day at Inspiral, I had an idea about a new product that I think could be really, really valuable for the organization. And I just spent a few days kind of working on it, and then I pushed it out to the 300 people who work at Inspiral through one of the apps we've built called Lumio, which is an online decision-making software tool. And instantly, people coming in, commenting on this idea, hey, what about this? Have you thought about this? Kate, you're obviously ignoring any tax implications with this thing. What are you thinking? So by just being able to push my idea out and truly collaborate, instantly I get validation, and instantly I get people from different organizations within our network coming and saying, I can help you with this, I can put you in touch with this person. And so within a few days, this product that was just a kind of infant, because no ideas are born fully formed. So this infantile little product had started to grow and get legs. And that's what real collaboration is. It's really believing that someone else's experience and diversity is going to be able to bring a lot more to your, pretty crap idea, really. We're living in an age where the cost of organizing is pretty low. And we're using a lot of digital services and products to do it. We're also living in a time where we're information rich. We're rolling in information. There's almost too much. And this is really different to the time when managers, for instance, had all the information, all the context, and more of the scope. That world, I think, is gone. So a little bit more detail on Inspiral, this thing that I keep talking about. So the Inspiral network is around 15 different startup ventures, working mostly in digital services and products, but also in other things like we have New Zealand's biggest independent media organisation. We have a team or a company that helps young people prototype solutions to mental health problems via technology. We have a campaigning platform called Action Station, where activists get up and campaign in the face of bad policy from our government. So it's a really diverse bunch of businesses working together. My organisation, Inspiral Labs, do organisational consulting, but also a few web services on the side. So there's a whole range of skills there. So the relationships in this Inspiral network and the levels of engagement. So we have around 300 people. 250 of those are contributors, and 40 or so are members. So members collectively own the foundation, which is Inspiral, and these are non-financial shares. These are just voting shares. Contributors are basically part of all decision-making processes, bar a very small few. And together I'll just skip that one. We voluntarily contribute money from revenue. So Inspiral Labs, my venture, contributes 10% of our revenue back to the core. Freelancers who are working within the network might give 20% of their income. So this money comes into the centre, and then collectively, collaboratively, we decide how to spend it. And the real push there is to enable more businesses to start in this really kind of scarce, pretty tough environment. So we've actually built an app to do this. It's called Co-Budget, and it's basically an internal crowdsourcing tool. So all the money comes into the middle, and then you can go into your Co-Budget account and allocate it to the projects that you think are kind of meaningful or need some help. The other essential part of running a decentralized, autonomous, bossless organization is decision-making. So as much as possible, we try to make sure everyone who wants to can participate in decisions for the network. So I just put a Lumio. Lumio is another tool that has come from Inspiral. It's one of the ventures. It's probably the most famous one, and it's amazing software to make decisions. So I just put a Lumio up the other day around the business venture I talked about before. And it's an amazing way to get further engagement and then eventually make a decision on what you're doing. So the Inspiral network has been through a bit of evolution over the last 6 years from when it began. So it started very much as a bunch of freelancers saying, we can, web developers basically, we can get paid pretty well for some of our time, and then we can do 20% time on the stuff that really matters to us. So they were working on problems around inequality, poverty, food systems in the early days. But then they started to realize, what if we just made businesses around this stuff instead of doing this kind of tricky thing of consulting most of the time and then running over to the project you're trying to work on for the other part? So that's when businesses started to begin within the network. And it was kind of like an incubator. And so we have 15 ventures today. Probably half of those started within Inspiral, but half of them have joined, have said, hey, okay, there's 300 or so people over here. We have similar values. I want to be part of this thing. Can I please become an Inspiral venture? So the community is growing quite a lot. And so this current phase that we're in, there's a real focus on open sourcing a lot of the processes and the tools that we've built to work collaboratively together, make lots of decisions, spend money collaboratively. Because I don't know about many of you, I've been traveling around Europe for the last few months talking about this stuff, and all these people kind of know about Inspiral, and we're like, what's going on here? There's a real trend towards these kind of buzzwords around teal and holacracy and sociocracy, and agile is a big part of it. Lots of what we do is based on agile principles. So Inspire was like this little petri dish in Wellington, New Zealand, where we're actually practicing a lot of this theory that's circulating around. And we are really, really experimental about what we do. We borrow from all these different methodologies and we just use what serves us and we throw the rest out. And we are really, really open about the stuff that we've done wrong, and I'll go into a little bit about that as well. So, a few things we've learned about collaborative organizing. And remember, this is all in service of autonomy. Don't get disappointed, Christina. So, decision-making, I've talked about it already, is basically the number one crucial thing around organizing in a really autonomous, bossless organization. And we use Lumio daily. There's about 20 decisions going up. And engagement is not always 100%. Sometimes it's 20%, sometimes it's 70%. Significant decisions need to have pretty solid engagement in order to pass. Another really interesting experiment that we've recently started running is around leadership. So how do you do leadership in a bossless organization where people have no real coercion or control over other people? So for a while, there was this thing happening called the tyranny of structurelessness, which is where you remove all the structure, you remove all the bosses, but there needs to be some strategic work going on somewhere, otherwise what's going to happen? And a lot of people were doing this work unpaid, and it became what we call the dark economy. And they started to get a little bit burnt out, and they were constantly going back to the core of Inspire and working on, just things like getting a new website going, or, I don't know, making a conflict resolution process. And it was kind of happening behind the scenes, and we realized we need to push it out into the open. Otherwise, we're drifting too far away from our principles of autonomy and no hierarchy. So a catalyst is a self-nominated leader who says, okay, I am a leader. I don't want to, have control over you, but I like doing the leadership stuff. So there's 4 people that have self-nominated to be catalysts, and they are paid for their time by one of the ventures. They're kind of sponsored. But between the 4 of them, they work the equivalent of one person, and they can't decide what to do. You can't really see it. Sorry, my Prezi skills here. But the board up there is called a waffle board. It's kind of similar to Trello or Asana in some ways. And it's like there's a backlog, there's scoping, there's in progress, there's celebrate. So the network, me and other contributors and members, decide what work the leaders should be doing. Whether I think we need some contingency funding just in case someone sues us or something. Here's a ticket, I'll put it in the backlog. I think this is important. The only real power the catalysts have is to prioritize that backlog and say, okay, between us, with our little bit more context and a little bit more scope than the rest of the network, we'll prioritize this ticket and start work on it, and we'll pull other people in. But if you're not a catalyst, you can still start working on one of those tickets. If you're like, okay, that's actually really important, I'm going to just do the work, you can. So there's no rules there. Another experiment we're running is around people. So how do you make sure humans are okay when you don't have an HR department, when you don't have anyone whose role it is to care? So we noticed the reason we're running this experiment is because we ran into a problem where we're starting to get a bit bigger, and not everyone knows each other as well as they kind of used to. And so conflict starts to arise sometimes when the relationships between people aren't as strong, especially if you're doing a lot of your work on online tools, like Slack, like Lumio, online discussion where you're not meeting up with people all the time and you kind of start to lose sight of who they really are can get a little bit tenuous. So we had a few blowouts and a few fights, and then a working group went away and said, how can we make sure that everyone is kind of taken care of and at least someone knows how that person is? So the thing is called stewarding. And this circle here is a circle with the face of every single member in the organization. And I am stewarded by someone, and I also steward someone. And it's kind of like this, it's not mentoring and it's not coaching. It's not patriarchal and it's not kind of top-down. it's adult to adult. So my steward is an American guy, 45, a very amazing web developer, used to work for Microsoft, I think, before he saw the light. And now, he is my steward, but he's got a lot more experience than me, but he doesn't enter into this relationship as, the patriarchal man who knows stuff. Kate, this is what you should do. You're going the wrong way here. Do this. It's much more a thing around asking the right questions. It's kind of service-based stewardship. And I also steward someone else who's a woman who lives in Christchurch, New Zealand. So you make up the rules of your stewarding relationships. You don't have to do any singular thing. You and your steward and your stewardee create the conditions together. And this experiment is just been running since June, and it's going really well. So these are 3 ways that we are prioritizing collaborative organizing. So the outcome of all this stuff, of a real focus on autonomy, collaboration, diversity, and no hierarchy, and a real emphasis on relationships between people, is a lot of trust. So we're a very high trust-based network. We design all our scenarios for a high trust interaction. And this, in the face of a lot of scarcity, because I don't know if you know, but social impact startups don't really get much money, because what investor wants to invest in a social return? They are starting to, which is good. So we're operating in a context of real resource scarcity, and we don't have a lot of the fallback options of when your boss tells you you've got to do this thing and it doesn't work. It's not really your fault some of the time. So we don't have that option. So we have to curate a lot of trust in order to be innovative, in order to survive in this really tough environment. So some of the practices that start to build trust are really important, and we do these things all of the time. And they're really simple. And if you came to the workshop yesterday, there's a little bit of repetition, sorry. So a check-in. And it sounds like I'm saying chicken. I'm sorry about that. I hear this all the time. It's check-in, sorry. New Zealand accent. I'm going to stop. I'm not saying it anymore. So this is simply at the start of every meeting or retreat or lunch, you turn up and you ask each other how you are. And you might start with a really basic question, like, what did you want to be when you grew up? If you're just starting this practice, you need to start with something pretty easy, pretty simple. And when you become really good at this practice, so every meeting you're asking people to tell you how they are in that moment. And it's a chance for every single person in the room to go around and say, I'm not that great. I didn't sleep. My 2-year-old woke me up. I've got so much work to do, and I just feel like I just don't want to be here, And that kind of radical honesty is really encouraged. And so when that happens, someone in your team might say, okay, well, I had a brilliant sleep. I don't have a kid. I'm feeling super great, and I'm not that busy. How about I just take some of your tasks off you? And let's go have a tea and hang out and make sure you're okay. So this kind of interaction is a really good way to start working together really well and to start trusting your team members, that they'll be honest with you if they've got stuff going on, because everyone does. And by expecting people to come to work and put on a mask and say, okay, I'm in my work armor now, everything's fine, I'm someone you can trust, rely on me, I'm not tired, I'm ready to go, just ignoring all this stuff that's going on for them in their real life, that's just wasteful, I think. There's so much so many ideas and things going on in our subconscious, but by pretending to be something we're not, we're reducing our ability to be innovative and to pull that stuff out, because we're wasting our time trying to be someone we're not. So a check-in is a way to start practicing being who we really are at work, and it's very, very simple. We also do a check-out. At the end of a meeting, it can be really, really quick. It's just a summary of how you're feeling leaving that meeting. It might be like, I'm still feeling crap, but that's okay. It's all okay. Another thing I've talked about already is retreats. So they're like the backbone of ensuring that people really know each other. And when you're bickering with someone on the online forums at 4 a.m. and you're kind of getting annoyed at this person, you can think back to that time at the retreat where you stayed up with them all night talking about a new product or how amazing, I don't know, tell me a coding language, JavaScript is or something. So a retreat for us, we've got one in February in Wellington, New Zealand. We always have them in a really, really beautiful place with lots of nature all around. In New Zealand, it's not that hard actually. And it's it's 5 days, the one in February. A lot of us are freelancers, so we're not necessarily paid for our time. But we're going there knowing that the relationships and the connections you make at these things are the things that carry you through when you're having some remote working situations or you're starting a new product or anything like that. Another key part of a retreat is very, very good food. There's nothing like food to bring people together and start the kind of conversations that get away from work and JavaScript and new products and start the real stuff of life. You can't see this either, but this is one of my favorite tools, cultural tools. It's called a thank you channel. Go into Slack, set up a channel called thank you, and just start thanking people for the work they're doing, or for bringing you a cup of tea, or for babysitting your kid. Anything. Gratitude, publicly showing gratitude is an amazing way to start to motivate people to do more and give more. And it's just nice, really. It's nice. So we've got the autonomy part pretty nailed. That's not a problem for us. We do have problems, though. I've talked about scarcity a bit. We have a burnout. So you're not necessarily paid for the time you work on Inspiral. You get your livelihood from one of the ventures that you work for within this Inspiral network, or you're a freelancer who does your work through Inspiral. We have a thing called services. So if you're a freelancer, you bill through services. Some of your money goes to the foundation. You can use the Inspiral brand. But working on the foundation or the network and doing all the organizational design stuff sometimes is unpaid. A new development is that you can raise a bucket in co-budget. So that's the app I was telling you about, where we do kind of internal crowdsourcing. And I just did one. I need $1,000 because I'm doing all this work on this new product that will benefit everyone. And it was filled in 2 days, which is fantastic. So a different way to earn money there. But we still have people working overtime, doing way too much and burning out and getting frustrated. The other problem is scale. So Inspiral is very much centered on trust and people knowing each other and really strong relationships. And we've got around 40 members now. So the rule, how you become a member, is you're invited by another member. And you have to have 75% engagement on our decision-making software tool, Lumio. And the majority of those people have to say, I agree, this person is great. So the condition there is that the other members basically have to know you. And as we get to around 40 members, it's becoming very hard to know 40 people, as well as your, personal, your friends and your family, and then 40 people at work. Oh my God, it's getting a bit tough. So something we're talking about quite a lot is this thing called, what's that bit of wood there? Mitosis. So this is a term from biology, and it means cells starting to split apart. So you've got one cell, and it becomes two cells. So that's kind of what's happening at Inspiral right now. We're starting to see the start of mitosis at the member level. So there might be the Wellington-based members and then the global-based members. And then from there, the network could basically start to do a mitosis of its own. And that's kind of the vision for Inspiral. We don't want to grow to 100,000 people. We want there to be 100 networks of networks working on stuff that matters, building businesses around social impact. Oh, I'm going pretty... Sorry, I'm not there yet. So, something that we've noticed at Inspiral is that when when relationships and when trust starts to break down, and I talked about this a lot with burnout of members. We had, just the other day, members starting to leave. One member who had been there since the beginning, since 6 years ago, said, "This is enough. I've had enough. This stuff is not efficient. Making decisions with 300 people is not efficient. Spending money across 300 people is not efficient." So there's real problems starting to happen. And a solution that we're working with at the moment is trying to peel back some of this stuff around everyone always needing to be involved in every decision. So a new experiment that we're running is called working groups. So a bunch of people within Inspiral can get together, that happened with stewarding, and say, okay, I sense that there's a big problem going on with people in the network not taking care of each other. I know that all of the network doesn't have the capacity and the context to engage with this question right now. We're going to break away as a working group with a lot of context and a lot of interest on this subject. So what happened was 13 people went away on a mini retreat, a retreat just focused around stewarding. So 2 days, again in a really beautiful location, a lot of good food, and they spent time getting really deep into the theory of stewarding. And they went back to Inspiral and they started a proposal, getting input from the other 300 people, saying, here's all the resources if you want to read them. These are the findings of what our thinking is. And then we'll start a proposal. So this is a really good experiment of what do you do when you're an organization of, 100,000 people? Is it really feasible to expect anyone more than a couple of, 30 people to engage in one thing? So a working group, going away, getting the context, getting the information, bringing it back to the network is a way to do that. Another kind of experiment we're running, and it's much more to do with teams, for those of you who are here to learn more about teams, is called a livelihood pod. I don't have a slide for this, but it's another kind of thing from biology. So livelihood pod looks like 4 or 5 or 6 people who are kind of working as freelancers, pooling their income and sharing their work. So currently my company, Inspiral Labs, we have 2 livelihood pods within it. One is called Root Systems, and they're the developer team. And any contract that they get, any web development work, they pull all of their income into the middle. And they have a calculation which determines what they draw from it for income. My pod, which is called Golden Pandas, I don't know why. It's not customer facing, it's totally internal. So there's 4 of us, myself, the ex-founder of Inspiral, so the guy that started it all, who's a very experienced, well-known developer, but also speaker. Another woman who is very, very experienced in the world of organizational coaching, and another guy around my age. So we are very, very diverse in our experiences, but there's no hierarchy there. So we pool all of our income into the middle, and we collectively take the same amount for now. And we're building up a buffer so that we can invest on new products coming out of Inspiral. Okay, so I'm getting towards the end slightly now. So in summary, it is entirely possible to work with full autonomy and to work in a way where you're not coercing someone and you're not controlling them. It really does start with self-awareness, and a big part of it is focusing on diversity and collaboration. There is this whole, very enticing thing over here, the freelancer economy, being a digital nomad, but I've done that. I went out and started a business on my own, and I've worked at many cafes and many beaches, and it starts to get pretty lonely. Working in a team, in a really strong team of people that have got your back no matter what, like my Golden Pandas posse, is one of the most empowering feelings that there possibly can be. Similar, belonging to a community where everyone there has your back, and I've experienced this in quite a few ways this year. I don't really talk about this often. Why not start now in a room of 600 people? At the beginning of this year, I went through a situation where I was being blackmailed by someone. It was horrible. The police were involved. The people I turned to were my community at Inspiral. The members, I sent an email around to the members. Instantly, what came back was, I'll do anything to help you right now. Do you want me to hack this person's email and destroy their reputation? I was like, well, I'll think about it. But this kind of relationship is what we're doing at Inspiral. Really, really high trust. It's kind of a family. It's a tribe. And it's a way that I think organizations should be going if they want to retain talented people like web developers who have every option in the world. But this kind of work gives people purpose. So, in summary, hierarchical systems are no longer efficient. Autonomy and community are really essential to this new world of work where change is continuous. And the secret ingredients is real trust between people. Just saying words, putting up a vision and mission statement that hasn't been agreed upon by all of the people involved is meaningless. Just like saying the words, we trust each other, is meaningless unless you start to really practice these things and make it the most important part of your everyday work culture. I think I've said enough provocative things now. If you do want to start using any of the tools, CoBudget and Lumio are really effective ways to start collaborating instantly. But there needs to be a lot of groundwork before you start just pushing decisions out to a few 100,000 people. So with that, thanks very much. It's been a real delight to be here talking to you all, and I think it's time for questions.
I'm so glad you saved a little time because you got a lot of very good questions. Let me ask them in popularity. What are the specific differences between a steward and a coach or a mentor?
Great. Fantastic. So I mentioned a little bit that I have a mentor actually in Wellington, and he's a guy I talk to when I actually want someone to give me some more direct advice or say, these are all the options. And it feels really different to a stewarding relationship, which is, it's really around the steward asking you questions for you to figure it out yourselves. Another really cool part of the stewarding thing is that my steward Don and I, whenever we check in on Zoom, we ask each other questions around our mental health. So he'll say, Kate, what have you been doing for your mental health? Have you been exercising? You're living this crazy nomadic lifestyle. What are you doing to make sure your health is really good? And so every time we meet online, he asks me these questions. So it's a constant reminder to me that in order to do my best work, I need to be healthy. And I ask him, even though he's my steward, I ask him, Don, have you been drinking Coke lately? Because he wants a constant reminder not to do that. So a stewarding relationship is quite different from a mentoring or a kind of advising relationship. It's not like, this is the direction you should be going in. It's, how can I help you figure it out for yourself?
There's also a related question down more. How do you choose your steward or stewardee, as a matter of fact?
Very good question. So the stewarding experiment, we don't choose. So there was a steward matchmaker who was part of the working group that started the stewarding experience. And she went around and considered everyone's relationships and spent a long time matchmaking us. So you don't get to choose, which is really interesting. You can, if you really want to, you can send in a list saying, okay, I'm really not happy to be stewarded by this person, but it doesn't really happen that much.
In a world with mostly freelancers, who provides the safety net that at least European employees currently have, sick leave pay, work injury rehab, etc.?
Yeah, that's a good question. So that's a really huge part of the freelance economy question right now. So at Inspiral, originally we had this thing called Craftworks, which was part of Inspiral Services, and that was like where the freelancers did their work from. We're not really solving that question really well. Sick leave, as a freelancer, you charge 30% extra in order to cover yourself for sick leave. You've got to do all your own tax. It's a different situation. I think there's a lot of organisations doing work to solve that question. And I think a solution to that is coming into a livelihood pod. So this is where you are essentially a freelancer, but you are pooling your income with other freelancers and drawing basically a salary. Even if you're sick, even if you take time off work, there's that constant constant income.
Is the Inspire way for everyone? Do you or did you have employees that did not feel comfortable within the organizational structure? You partly answered that too. Let me add to this question related. What do you think is the optimal size? Because you said that people are leaving now, that you're over 300. And have you ever had a breach of trust that you value so much?
Yes. So I think around 300 is the optimal size, with 40 or so members for an organisation like this, and then the mitosis should occur. Yes, there have been breaches of trust. When something like that happens in an organisation like ours, where there's no manager or there's no firing, basically, unless you're within a venture itself. So someone raises a red flag, both literal and online, and we have a conversation at the member level around what to do, and you can ask someone to leave, basically, if trust is breached in a really, really bad way.
So your answer to the actual question is that it's not for everyone, size matters.
Yeah, I mean, is the question around, is working without bosses and with full autonomy for everyone? Maybe not. Some people don't want to be doing all this work on the organisational level, on the design. They want to be going to work. They want to have the exchange of their skills and the tasks in order for a salary or an income, and that's fine.
Is it really a bossless culture, or leaders are eventually emerging automatically and start to have more influence on things through their relationships?
Yes, that is a thing. So social capital really starts to accrue in an organisation without bosses. And leaders, there are always leaders everywhere. Our behaviour is to encourage leadership from everywhere. So everyone is a leader, basically, if they want to be. But the social capital one and power accruing with certain individuals that have stronger relationships. Yeah, it happens, but we also acknowledge that it happens, so we try to draw it out and have lots of conversations about it all the time. And currently, right now at Inspiral, there's a very, very interesting Lumio going on about this very subject. It's called Trust and Power. And it's about the path to membership not being very explicit. So yeah, we just try to have lots of honest conversations. We try to be really strong in the fact that we welcome divergence, we welcome people with different opinions to us, and we try to work it out.
What's the result of those conversations? Are those leaders who want to be leaders a little more than other people who don't want to be that much of leaders?
Yeah.
Better at doing leadership positions, or are you trying to discourage them?
No, we're not trying to discourage them. That's the catalyst experiment. So if you are a natural leader and you just love that stuff, you love thinking about strategic level stuff, and you like working on, I think of it more as administration stuff. I don't think it's interesting at all. But you're invited to become a catalyst. So the number of catalysts could increase from 4 to 12. And then we'd all be really happy, because I would be. I wouldn't have to do any of the boring leadership work.
We don't have more time, and I forgot to bring the picture that's drawn of you.
Oh.
So I'll have to give it to you in a second. Thank you for being here with us.
Thanks. Thank you, everyone. Thanks.